What is good, everyone? Welcome back to the Exhaust Notes podcast, your new favorite Formula One podcast. My name is Nick Ingval. I'm with my guys, Rohit and Todd, to talk about some racing.
It's just three yahoos talking, which is really what any podcast is.
Well, way to set up your own segue, Ro, but for you, I wore my Ferrari red.
Cut me deep. My allegiances are with Carlos, but anyway, let's not get there right away. Let's set the table as only we can. So, Todd, what happened?
As we have come to find out, Daddy Big Stick John Elkann of Ferrari dropped a bag on Lewis Hamilton, and he is now going to be racing for the Scuderia as of 2025, which is probably the most shocking driver transfer of all time. I can't think of another one, like going back pretty far, other than maybe, this is weird to say, but Lewis jumping ship from McLaren after he had won a title with them to go to Mercedes. He's one-upping himself.
Can I ask you this? Wasn't he at Ferrari? Because when I first heard this, I got LeBron going back to Cleveland vibes.
No.
In the sense
he's
that
he's never raced for the Scuderia before.
No, but he raced Fred Vasseur. Was
in F2. His team principal was Fred Vasseur.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of that.
Apologies, because for some reason I thought he had been in Ferrari at some point.
No, he's never raced for them. But how do you feel as the resident Ferrari fan, or
I'm a Carlos Sainz fan. I mean, okay. So here's the thing. I heard the news. This is fascinating to me for a couple of different reasons. Number one, who is the 1A driver on that team now? And we always talked about the fact that in Ferrari, you never know who's 1A and 1B. So let's complicate the matter even more, because what faith are you showing in, I was going to call him Charles Hamilton, which is an obscure rapper from like the last 15 years. What faith are you giving Charles Leclerc? Because let's call a spade a spade. I think he and Carlos Sainz have been fairly even as drivers, even though Leclerc is supposedly supposed to wipe the floor with Sainz, and now you're adding the umpteenth time world champion in Lewis Hamilton. Like, who's the number one driver on that team right now, if you had to ask? My point exactly.
I think it's
That's one thing.
It's Leclerc, obviously. It's going to take time for Lewis to bed into that car. And
does he have the time, though? Like, I mean, how long is his contract?
A multi-year. So we're looking at 2+.
Okay.
Probably 3. But the reason, which was the most shocking thing of all of this transfer, is that Lewis knows that he's kind of in the twilight of his career and wanted to set up a deal with Mercedes to be an ambassador, which means them still dropping the bag on him until 2035, I believe was the date. And through these negotiations, John Elkann from Ferrari, he's the president, CEO or whatever of Ferrari proper, he said, yeah, come be an ambassador for us. You're good until 2035. And he's never raced for them before. And he is only going to race for them, let's say at max 5 years, right? He pulls pulls an Alonso and goes well into his 40s. He's turning 40 this year. Or 39, maybe.
Let's just round up to 40. Yeah.
Okay, let's say 40. So at 45, he retires, and then he has another 7 years of being an ambassador for Ferrari, when he won 7/8 world titles with Mercedes.
Yeah, we live in the era where it truly doesn't matter in terms of allegiances or loyalty. It's the loyalty to the paycheck, and I'm here for it because I'm always a fan of let athletes get their money because they live in a very volatile world. Like, they're only as good as the last race they've won, which unfortunately for Lewis has been 2 years now. Like, let me ask you this other question. Do you see Lewis winning a race this year in Ferrari? Or, sorry, in 2025. I keep thinking it's going to happen this year. But for all intents and purposes, this is going to be a gap year for a lot of drivers on the grid.
I think he will. I think this is way bigger than money. I think it's just disrespectful of Mercedes to not give him a contract. These teams pay their legacy drivers for decades. Like, yeah, they might not be Like, think about like where Lewis is. Like you're talking about at worst and this is not how I feel, but I'm saying like at worst, the worst human being on the planet might be able to justify that Lewis is the third best driver of all time. Mm-hmm. That's somebody that's going to be around the sport. They're going to drive car sales. They're going to drive entire generations of fan bases to a certain team. Mercedes like fumbled this in like such a terrible way, in my opinion. It's like,
talk about it more.
Well, it's like if let's look at Seb, right? Seb is going to be around the sport for forever because he loves the sport, but he's also going to make it a better sport. He's going to make it better for people. And every person that got to watch him race and got to see him evolve became a bigger fan of him as he got older. You go on social today and people talk about Seb every day, and he hasn't been anywhere near Formula One in the way that he was prior, right? Like, yeah, he's popped up here and there, and then the guys go hang out with him, and the other drivers go see him. Lewis is his cosign on a brand is so much more powerful than Seb's, in my opinion. I don't think it actually matters what car he won his championships in. I think, yes, like the diehard Lewis fans are going to be like, I'm still driving my Mercedes. Same way that Schumacher diehards are going to be Tifosi, right? Like there's a lot of that crossover. But to, like this is like the Bulls not bringing Jordan into the family and letting him go to the Wizards and letting him go become an owner over there and then become an owner of the Hornets. Like you could have, and granted, I get MJ is like, a North Carolina boy, but like that to me is like the biggest fumble in like NBA history, because if the Bulls would have just thought that through a little bit and kept a little bit, drop the ego down and keep the ringer on the phone, then you have the greatest player in the history of the game of basketball as a brand ambassador for the team that everyone loves to see him play. They'd still sell 10 times as many jerseys today if he was just around the Bulls for the 10 years that followed.
Jerry Krause's widow would not get booed.
Exactly.
On Last Dance night.
Exactly.
No, that's exactly it.
It's just weird to me. Like it's like I'm also like a huge baseball fan, right? And the one thing that baseball does well, and the Giants do it better than any team, in my opinion, even taking my fandom out, they consistently bring back ex-players to be coaches, to be brand ambassadors in the city, to be actively involved in the team and the organization after the fact for decades. Like my favorite players have come and gone out of the organization multiple times because they're always trying to bring back that nostalgia and that play of like, oh, let's get these fans back into this, right? If Mercedes is thinking long term, the car brand and the Formula One team, both of them need to have talked through this, right? Because the fact that you let Lewis go to Ferrari, let's say he does win his 8th championship with Ferrari, which I actually think he will do. Like, I think that this is like big energy shift, right? We haven't seen this in a long time in Formula One. This is Ferrari needing a jolt. This is Fred Vasseur finally getting things rolling in the right direction. This is Lewis proving that he was more than the Mercedes car. There's so many elements to this that the universe wants to see Lewis win, to be like, this is why he's the greatest, in my opinion. And yes, I'm a fan, but like there's so many things lining up for this to happen. There's also the Red Bull switch from Honda to Ford power units. Like there's going to be a slip up or in some way with that. Like we know that when those things happen, it takes a little bit to get back up to speed. It's like one little window of opportunity. If Lewis wins his 8th title and becomes the prominent only 8-time champion in Formula One in a Ferrari, who the hell cares what he did before that? Because he's going to show up in Ferrari red for the next 10 years because they were like, yeah, sure, come be a fan of us. Why would you not? Like, I would literally pay any previous Formula One driver to be around as an ambassador. Like, imagine if Kimi Räikkönen is being paid to be an ambassador, that's my favorite team right now. Like,
sad for me.
I just want to go see him. I just want to go see him be himself around the team.
And I will say this: if Lewis can overcome whatever demons and pet cemetery that Ferrari testing grounds were on, and he can bring them to a level of complacency, maybe complacency after competency, that might be the single most impressive thing he's done. Because if he can truly lift all boats in that Ferrari tide to, I would say, I'll be impressed if he gets a win with them his first year. Because I'm just not convinced. And you guys have said it yourself. I am the Ferrari fanboy of the thing. I'd like to think at times I'm objective, at times I'm subjective. I just don't think that infrastructure, no matter what Fred Vasseur has done, and this is a big fish. Like, we always talk about the fact that you have to win the race, but sometimes you have to win the press conference right before. They've won the press conference. This is a dynasty winning press conference as far as I'm concerned. Now it's just turning into the fact that, okay, can he do it? Because if he does, great. I think this is the most impressive thing he's done, that, like I've said before. But then I keep coming back to the actual structure of the team. For one, I think they let the wrong driver go. But that's just me. If you guys have listened to this podcast, if this isn't your first podcast, you guys know I bang the Sainz drum more than anybody, but I think they let the wrong driver go. And I would feel a lot better about Lewis's chances had it been Carlos that stayed and not Chuck.
I think that Tifosi would have carpet bombed Maranello if they let go of Leclerc. Like, literally,
I get that.
Yeah. Chaos.
I absolutely get that. Like, he is the prodigal son. And I know that there are certain sacred cows that even at Ferrari can remain untouched. But I've also always said that if there's one driver that would benefit from a sea change, it would be Charles Leclerc, but it's never going to happen. He is essentially Rapunzel trapped in a castle because he can let down his hair all he wants. Nobody's ever going to climb up that hair. He's going to just be stuck in that tower crying because he messed it up again. And now I think you're adding that added pressure cooker. Let's ask George Russell how the last 2 years have gone for him now. The first year he had Lewis. Now the last two, it seems, or has it been only 2 years total with the two of them?
It was together? Like half a year last year, and then he kind of wiped the floor with them this year.
Yep.
Go ahead, Todd.
The one thing that we haven't really talked about yet is what did Lewis see over the winter at Mercedes that's like obviously I think Lewis at the end of the day just wants to win races. Like, he's getting the bag already. He's set for life. He has the legacy. I think he's still in the sport because he just wants to race and win races, right? So what did he see from the factory that he's like, either they didn't listen to me and all my feedback last year because he was very, very animated about that. Yes. Or two, what did he see from the Ferrari side that he was like, you know what, I'm going to jump ship. They have a fast race car. We know that, but it's usually one lap pace. Not as bad in the Haas sense, but they have a lot to fix, let's say, from fragility to strategy to whatever. So what could be going so wrong at Mercedes that he was just like, you know what, I'm out?
I think it's a perfect storm. I think there is probably something in his perception. And granted, there's nobody that would understand that car better than Lewis Hamilton on this earth. But maybe he's so close to the forest that he's only seeing trees, and he's making something bigger than what it is with regards to that Mercedes. The other thing is, I think he has the ego to say, you know what, I can be the missing link. I am the truly last thing that can make Ferrari great again, and that's why I'm going to go over there. Because I've seen this from a distance. Nothing seems to work. Prodigal son, charismatic journeyman, both of them don't seem to work for Ferrari. Let the GOAT come in. Let the GOAT shine.
God, if he wins a race this year, it's going to be chaos. Imagine if he wins Monza.
Oh.
Like, everyone's collective O-face at once. It's going to be insane.
I mean, I think the other part of this, like, if I remember right, he's taking one of his engineers, right? Is going.
Well, it's been talked about that Peter Bonington might be following him, but mostly just from a communication aspect because the team at large is still very much Italian.
Yeah. And
he doesn't want the confusion to set in during races to be like, because, I mean, God, we've heard the strategy, team strategy radio, Roger checking, and they just don't know what to do. So I think he might. It was talked about that he's bringing Peter Waddington along with him. I don't know if that's a fact yet, though. The one thing I will say that I'm a huge fan of is that no matter what, even if he's meddling mid-pack, right, for his time at Ferrari, the vision of John Elkann, and I said this in the Discord, and I don't mean to pat myself on the back for the memes, but the dude, John Elkann, if you can look him up, look up a picture of John Elkann. I hope I'm saying that right, or it could be Elkann. I don't know, whatever. He's the CEO of Ferrari. He looks exactly like the villain in Too Fast, Too Furious, like to a T. So look him up.
Empty cup.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the one.
I'm just glad that he saw the vision that no matter what his history was with the prior teams, that people don't care. Like a megastar like Lewis can be accepted by the Tifosi and sell Ferraris for the rest of his life. Because let's think about this. Niki Lauda was until his death, a Mercedes ambassador. He never raced for Mercedes.
Yep.
Not once.
Yep.
He raced for McLaren. He raced Brabham. He raced for Ferrari.
Yeah.
And he became a Mercedes ambassador, and everybody never said anything like, "Hey, you didn't race for that team."
Yeah, I was
just
going
such
to
a
bring
star
that up too. Yep.
That's a great point.
Another. I mean, he's got 3 titles, right? Was in the pits until he was 70 and passed 70-ish and passed away. Like,
yeah,
I think,
and a mentor to Lewis,
right? Yeah, Lewis won Monaco, like that crazy pass on Max, whatever, a few years back, and dedicated the race to Niki Lauda right after, right? Like that was the same weekend that he passed. To me, like that's the like big picture thinking, that it's just like frustrating that Mercedes would even let this slip up, right? Because like I think it's even more important to have more black kids looking up to Lewis Hamilton. And he knows that. Everything he's done in his career. Like, I love Michael Jordan. I love Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson is not the best role model for most people by many standards, but he's become an incredible human being as he's become older. And he's, to me, still like my most favorite revered, athlete. But when I look at like Michael Jordan, for instance, we all know, being into sneakers,
them kids.
Yeah. Like we just don't, we know that MJ is not, he values money a lot more than most people do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of people that value money, and like, to your point about Christian Horner, like maybe he's just a dick to work with, who knows? But when you embrace the fact that you're the role model and that you can change the lives of entire generations of kids that never thought that they could be a Formula One driver or a race driver of any kind, now all of a sudden, like you're more powerful than the sport itself. And that to me is where Lewis is at. And he's looking at the future, and like, he's like, look at the way Seb has done that on the consciousness
environmental
side.
front.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like you've become bigger than the sport. You have people that are fans of you that, like, my parents are fans of Seb, and they only saw him for a year or two before he retired, because they came into it because of Drive to Survive. Lewis has been doing all this stuff all along. He's set the sport up to become much bigger than the narrow-mindedness that we know it came from previously. And to me, like, that's also like something that Ferrari needs. It's like, fuck, like the amount of opportunity that you just stepped into is like Ferrari's potentially life-changing for a ton of people, but it's potentially like sport of Formula One and cars in general, like bigger than what you could have ever done with Mercedes. And I think it takes some serious balls to walk away from the sure shot of Mercedes that he had, regardless of if he felt they weren't going to pay him enough or making him ambassador long enough, all those things. It's just like, holy shit, he made this choice. Like, I'm almost more of a Lewis fan now because he was like, I'm going to go prove it, Yep.
Yeah, I'm rooting for him. And because if there's one word to describe Lewis Hamilton's career, especially in the back half, it's aspirational. He has always kind of put diversity as his number one core value. And this may be a dumb question to ask, but hey, I'm the new guy here. Has there ever been a black driver for Ferrari? No?
Not that I know of.
What great person to be the first black driver for Ferrari than Lewis Hamilton? Because to your point, Nick, it opens up a world. So if I'm a kid of color or underrepresented person that's a Formula One fan, I now see the pinnacle of drivers arguably going to the pinnacle of constructors. And now anything is possible. And that is something truly great that a lot of people take for granted. But until pen is put to paper and more importantly, dollar has hit the account, it's not going to happen. And now that it has happened, yes, Lewis is going to take on a world of pressure. But to paraphrase the old Jay-Z line, pressure's not going to make that man crack at all. Like, pardon me, I have to laugh at that. Like, if there is one person that's going to break this Ferrari curse, it could be and it should be Lewis Hamilton. So that's where I know for you guys, I know for me, we're going to do this podcast for at least 2 more years because we want to see how that first year goes.
Yeah. To answer your question, Lewis is the only black driver that's ever raced in Formula One.
Yeah, in Formula One.
I know. I just need to say that for people just because it's an absurd thing to say out loud. But it's one of those things that because Ferrari is Ferrari, it's in hallowed grounds. And as you were kind of talking about it, to me, a buddy of mine used to have this parlor game with me where he would ask me, it's like, if you could be any athlete for any team and you bring home a title for that team, what would you be? And I would always say, I would want to be the championship winning point guard on the New York Knicks. Because if I do that, given the history of that position in that city, you would never have to eat another meal again. I think I'm amending that if I'm the driver that brings a championship back to Ferrari and outside of being actually Italian, if Lewis Hamilton can do that, that's GOAT-like stuff. Just because there's so much infrastructural, so much window dressing that, especially given Italy's checkered past with racial movements, let's just say that. Like, this is also one of those things where that is probably the greatest red middle finger Lewis Hamilton can give to racists. Is like, you know what? I'm going to win at the most questionable in terms of geopolitical countries possible. And like I said, I'm excited for it. The only thing I now wonder is how do the rest of the dominoes fall? Because this is a big one. Like where do we see?
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could spend a whole another episode on what the hell the driver market could look like after next year. Because literally besides Lando, Oscar, Max, Charles, Lewis, and Stroll, but he doesn't really count. Everybody else, I think, ends in 2025.
24.
Or 24, sorry.
24.
It's going to be the most insane driver market.
Yeah.
Can I just ask this? Because, indulge me, gentlemen, as you often do every episode here on the Exhaust Notes podcast. Where's Sainz going from here? Like, that's the other thing. To me, like, it's one thing to have lost a average to below average driver to make way for the GOAT. I think Carlos Sainz is a top 5 driver. And he is getting short shifted.
Is this going to be my "but did he" moment of the episode?
That's why I set this up perfectly. Because now, if there's one thing we love in this podcast, it's our respective catchphrases. But did he become a top 5 driver, Todd Yates?
No. But is he? He's not. He's not. He's not a top 5 driver. Not when you have Max, Lewis, Charles, Lando, Alonso.
I'm not giving you 2 of those guys.
Who?
I'm not giving you Charles. I'm not. And
no,
not Alonso. Alonso got by on his name alone. Great. He had a great first third of the season.
Put him in a top 3 car. That MFer is finishing in a podium spot every race, unless it blows up. And it could be his own doing. It could be his own doing.
That's my
He could, but it's either
the ceiling is higher with Fernando, but the basement is better with. Okay, anyway, continue.
Yeah, but you're gonna get a P4, 5, 6 out of Sainz, or you're gonna get 17 podiums and 3 DNFs from crashing out. What would you rather have?
Give me Sainz, because there's no way that dude is getting 17 podiums. Do you want to make a juice box?
Put him in a top car. Put him in a top car. That dude is a double world champion. Put some respect on his name.
I'm going to alienate my co-host, and I'm going to say this. Red Bull, if you have balls, get rid of Danny Rick. Put Fernando in that second seat.
He would be P2 to Max every friggin' race.
Oh, no. I think if there's one thing that would derail Max, it would be Fernando as his co-driver.
Well, he would do the mind games and everything. Yep. There would be some fireworks in that garage for sure.
Yeah.
But if he's not first, he's P2, and I'm not going to do the button.
Is he?
You
gotta get that high octave. Yes.
To answer your question, Sainz is put a stamp on it right now going to Audi. He'll take a middle year, a year of pain as steak, crypto, McDonald's, Cactus Jack, Formula One team, and then he will be an Audi Works driver set up by his father who just won Dakar.
Oh, what car did
Dakar. Jesus Christ. He's going to Audi. Sign it, seal it, deliver it.
Yeah, I said that like 15 episodes ago. You and I agree. I just wanted you to say it.
Dakar.
I do think it's really like fascinating to know that you're like, imagine if in any other sport, if you were signed to a different team and still playing for the old team. Like Formula One is so weird like that.
Yes.
Like, imagine Mahomes is already signed to the Niners next year, but he has to play the Niners.
You bite your tongue.
Exactly.
You bite your tongue, the both of you.
I hope they both lose, so I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl.
I hope the Chiefs win. I hope Travis proposes to Taylor on the middle of the field, and I hope to celebrate, they get a vaccine and a booster right then and there. F you, Middle America.
Where's Kansas again?
It's in Missouri.
Where's Kansas City?
It's in the Missouri.
Middle of America? Yeah. That's right.
And they're in the blue part of the state. If everybody knows Kansas City is blue, St. Louis is blue, there's little pockets of blue in the middle, but otherwise it's red.
I think the most beautiful thing, side tangent here, the most beautiful thing about the Super Bowl, other than being a 49er fan and you being a Chiefs fan and like having the rematch again, is that it's actually like it's being played out in the Raiders' now home stadium. So like the two teams that Raider fans hate the most. Todd, sorry.
I'm leaving.
It's okay. Are you not showing
the Raiders
up like
should have
the Raiders?
never left Oakland. The Raiders should
I
have never
100%
left
agree with
Oakland.
you. I just finally kind of started caring again about football after they left. All right. I promise to never buy another piece of memorabilia or a hat or a jersey or anything Raiders related after they left again. But imagine my nightmare. We're not even talking about Formula One now. Imagine my nightmare of look at these scenarios. The Chiefs win, division rival, hate them, respect them, but hate them.
That's
or
right.
the Niners win, and then I have to hear every bandwagon Niner fan wearing their crap for the next year. Like, yay, we won the Super Bowl. You didn't win the Super Bowl. You didn't watch a single game. And now you're going to celebrate the Super Bowl.
I'm going to get your son a Fred Warner jersey if they win.
I won't light it on fire because that's just disrespectful, and bad for the environment.
Thank you.
Okay,
See,
let's talk about Formula One again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that this move from Lewis is actually going to benefit Charles Leclerc more than most people realize.
Talk to me about that. Yeah.
The issue with the Ferrari team right now is not
The
issue with the Ferrari team right now is it could be debated which driver is prioritized, right? I think everybody's pretty close. You know, it's like it's fairly close to the middle. You lean probably towards Charles, or you know, like if you're Rowett, you free Carlos Sainz, right? But like to me, that's the biggest kind of problem with the team is that you don't have the clear path to the front, to the top, right? And there's many issues with the team in terms of the way they manage things, the strategies, pit strategies, all that stuff. But like that in itself is like the fundamental like struggle point of where they're at. It doesn't even really matter if Lewis is the guy or if Leclerc is the guy moving forward, but you've moved away from this like 3-year period of kind of like what the hell's going on with the team. I think that will free up Charles in thinking like he's going to have to like push to keep up with Lewis, regardless of how long it takes Lewis to get used to a car, which I don't think it's going to take him long. I think to Todd's point about Fernando, like I think you put Lewis in any car that's top half of the grid and he's top 5 driver, regardless of what car he's in. Same thing with Alonso, right? And I think that's going to be the case. He's going to get into this Ferrari. It's going to be a better car than where they've been. You're also going to have the kind of fallback of the Ford Red Bull stuff. You're going to have Audi in the mix in the following season. So there's going to be just enough changes happening throughout the grid that Ferrari's going to bring a pretty competent car. Like I can't remember a time where they weren't top half of the grid or better, right? We talked about Williams a lot, falling off. New fans think of Williams as a bottom tier team. If you watched Formula One for decades, Williams is like the quintessential like grassroots racing story of going from nothing to becoming a winning franchise. And I think Ferrari's never had that. They've had off years. They've fallen off a little bit. They're ebbed and flowed. But they've almost always been on the top half of the grid. They never had that like, okay, we're at the bottom. What do we do now? Can we survive? And I think that's like kind of gives you like it kind of gives the team, and with the 2 drivers they had, that kind of like, well, we're always going to be somewhere sort of competitive, but we're not going to win. And like, that's like the worst place for a team to be. Like, I'd rather be 20 and know like we suck, but if we get 1 win this season, we're going to party like it's 1999. Yeah. And if we're the best, then all you got to do is keep killing it every time out. So I think they're kind of in that weird in between space in terms of like consistency, where it's like they're consistently average, above average, but like for what we expect for Ferrari, consistently average. And they've almost gotten too comfortable in that space, where it's like, how is it acceptable?
Lewis is essentially a shot in the arm to basically say, like, get your shit together. Yeah. I'm a former champion. I have aspirations to be a future champion. And I'm going to either carry you by the scruff of your neck as an entire team, or we're going to crash and burn. So almost like an Alonso-esque approach.
Yeah.
I guess my question to you, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just going to say, like, on that same vein, though, the flip side of that coin is, remember when Seb left and joined Red Bull or Ferrari? Like, it was that exact same scenario, right? I'm a former champion. I'm aiming to become a champion again. They actually were trending upward, I guess you could say. And then they fell flatter than they've ever fallen, right? I think they got like P5 or P6, kind of due to maybe they finagled the fuel pumps a little bit. Whatever. We don't talk about that.
Who amongst us hasn't finagled the fuel pump? That might be my OnlyFans name at the end of this episode. Keep listening.
But like, there is the very strong possibility of that happening, right? Red Bull is even more dominant. Lewis doesn't win a race. Cool, he gets a couple of podiums. A small percentage of the Tifosi still hate him because of his skin color. Like, it doesn't really move the needle, right? The only way this is like, it's a huge risk. Payoff is obviously huge, but there's probably a more likely scenario than not of them just being P2, P3.
Can I ask you this? One last question before we exhaust all that we have, because this is the Exhaust Notes podcast. Fine. Last lap of Monza. It's Lewis in Ferrari, Charles Leclerc 1-2. Is somebody getting the, hey, let the other guy through, or are they going to let him race? Because that's, to me, truly what I'm most interested to see 2 years from now. Because it's all good and well that we're going to say, oh, yeah, Charles Leclerc is still number one. Lewis is just there to push him and try to get one last title. But somebody has to be the number one driver, and there are going to be feelings. And if we thought Lewis whined with Mercedes, what is he going to do when he runs into that first special brand of Ferrari ineptitude? Because he's not going to take that lying down.
Oof. That's a really good question. I don't see him pulling a Sainz and saying, F you, I'll do my own strategy then. I see him more whining about it, trying to change it after the fact from within. I don't think he'll do. But it's not going to be. It's not going to be a multi. I just got a very. But did he look from Nick for the audio listeners? I don't see him pulling a Seb multi 21 on. Was it Coulthard? I'm confusing Red Bull drivers now, but like him ignoring
Weber. Yeah, Weber. Mark Webber.
Multi 21
before my even time.
Yeah. But I don't see him doing that. I just, or do it. Maybe he's just going to go like genius brain and figure out a way to pass him while still not technically ignoring team orders or something.
I'm just here for the inevitable Lewis congratulating Charles by looking at his performance on the screen, much like Fernando did our boy Lance Stroll this past year, because he's going to do that. Lewis has that bit of asshole in him. Good job, Chuck. Who's the kid from Peanuts that says Chuck all the time? Is it Peppermint Patty? Yeah. Anyway, Nick, expand on your butt. Did he look?
Yeah, but yeah, I think he's going to have way more freedom than Carlos does. You know, like there's been a lot of criticism. There's never a shortage of criticism of the Ferrari team, but the reality is the only win that they got was when Carlos stuck to his guns. I think that's kind of like, as shitty as it is, it's normal in any work relationship, right? Like the guy that gets hired to be the chief of marketing that comes into the organization is like, here's a good example. Like John Donahoe, CEO of Nike, keys to the castle, do what you want to do, comes from eBay, knows the secondary market, knows how to market things. I have no idea how good he is at his job, but he's given the power to like make those decisions based on his previous experience and roles, which is always a weird thing to me because there is definitely somebody at Ferrari right now. There's somebody at Nike right now, a few steps down from CEO, that is more capable to make the decisions to run the company or to run the team. But that's just the nature of the game when you have these big corporations, big organizations, right? It's tough to navigate. And Lewis is probably the best person in a car to make those decisions. You know, like he has way more, I mean, maybe Alonso, you know, but like those two guys have, if you're going to give any driver the like go ahead to make their decision on strategy, those two get it, right? Because even Max he's too young. He's almost had too much experience winning to where like the nuance aspect of what you learn over 15 or 20 years driving is valuable. Like it is, you know? And I think that's where Lewis is. He'll have to make those decisions on his own. I don't think it's going to be like, there's never going to be anything conditional with Lewis in this Ferrari relationship, right? Like they're wanting him for his stardom and his talent and his knowledge of the sport. And I think that's clear by the way that they're approaching the partnership and saying, hey, we know just as well as you do that like you're not going to race forever, but we want you around after the racing is done. And to me, that says a lot about how they're going to actually act and kind of work with him, you know?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm super optimistic about this, and I think that it has the potential to like really make things competitive again in like ways that we don't even expect. Just because it's coming all with all this change, you know, like we talked about, and we'll talk about on a future episode, all the driver changes that are coming, all of the kind of nuance that will come with all those shifts into this new car, the new regs, all that stuff. It's just a good time. And, you know, something had to happen so that Todd would actually want to watch racing this year. Unfortunately, it's all happening next year, so he's still not going to want to watch. But, you know, he'll be there in 2025.
I want those fireworks between the hall monitor and Lewis. And Imagine that Ferrari trying to give team orders this year. Carlos is like, I'm not listening to you. I'm not even going to be here next year.
So I was going to ask you that. How do these teams play this, right? Because Lewis is gone from Mercedes. Carlos is gone from Ferrari. Do they try to give team orders? Do they start to bring in younger talent to give them time in a seat? Like, obviously, that all depends on where these guys are at on the grid. If both of them come out just guns blazing and like are battling with Max at the front to like prove themselves in their last season, that could be the most beautiful season we get to see. You know,
the P2 through P5, 6 battle is going to be so good because you throw the McLaren boys in there, and everybody's just saying like
nobody's talking about McLaren, and they're about to stealthily take P2. Hot take.
They very well could be. Imagine Lewis and Charles are fighting because like Lewis wants to leave on a high note and say like, yeah, you're still not as good as me and leave the team, that kind of thing. Same thing with Carlos saying like, oh, I'm not good enough to be on Ferrari, so whatever, I'm going to show you why you should have kept me, that kind of thing. God, that's going to be so good.
Can't wait for this. When is our hot takes episode, Nick? I'm salivating.
What do we have? We have 4 weeks, 5 weeks now.
40. We're doing it after the preseason testing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we can like have actually, we can act like we're informed. Oh, we watched preseason testing. We know what's going to happen, and then be completely wrong.
Spoiler alert, listener! I'm not watching a minute. These takes are hot. They're not lukewarm takes.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah. We got a few weeks.
We got good episodes coming your way too, listener. Don't worry. We heard the feedback from last episode. That was our preseason testing. Now we're ready. We are so ready for this. Cut to a 6-week break.
The second race of the season. All right, so we're going to do our hot takes episode now.
And our drafts. Can you guys believe it?
Yeah. Oh, God, we need to do that too.
Yeah, we got to figure that out.
And set up fantasy. Got a lot of work.
Well, I think this is the best thing about this whole Lewis thing is it is kind of invigorating for a lot of reasons. So I think it's going to bring a lot more 100%. A lot more interestingness to the sport for 2024. So yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. Go ahead.
We can leave it with this. Our friend Sebastian Vettel said it best. Even if you're not a Ferrari fan, you're a Ferrari fan.
Can we make that the episode title, Nick?
Yes, definitely.
Either that or Free Carlos Sainz.
That's a good one. I'll actually use both of them. I'll use one on one platform, one on the other.
Do the Ferrari one because I think we need those listeners.
All right.
Palatial estates don't pay for themselves.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you, gentlemen. If you could let everybody know how to find you outside of the show.
You can find me on Instagram at RoadM13, on Threads at RoadM13, on X at Roheezy, on Blue Sky at RoadM13, on Kickstarter as the Free Carlos Sainz movement starts. Todd, where can they find you?
On Instagram at dadshoe.jpg, on Threads. I lurk there. Come shout me out. At dadshoe.jpg. On Twitter, I refuse to call it the other one. dadshoe_jpg. And most importantly, come find me at the Discord and yell at me about what we got wrong this episode. I know we will be getting a text from Trevor whenever this episode releases, correcting me on what either of you said.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
And that's the joy of being Todd's friends, because all the hate mail goes to him directly, and he does a great job shielding us from it.
Yep.
Hi, Trev.
Yes. You can find me at Nick Engvall on all the platforms. More importantly, follow Exhaust Notes FM on all the platforms. And the first link in the description will get you in the Discord. Appreciate you listening, watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Daniel Ricciardo.
future Mercedes driver, Alex Albon.